The technology behind the scenes is essentially what we refer to as a personal language model. When we started the company 3 years ago, the development of large language model was known. But my co-founder and CTO, Sharon Zhang, she told me that to truly achieve what you're trying to achieve, you cannot start with a large language model because fundamentally, we need to ground this data in small amounts of data, which belongs to an individual. So we actually start with something called a long-term memory of every person. And this memory is time-bound, like similar to how our lives are. As you go by your life, historically or continuously, we create this like memory unit, a unit of data. I'm Suman Kanuganti. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Personal.ai.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Like 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing at the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who build the teams that have their back.
The company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve. I was proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time. The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it
you.
off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it. Not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Suman Kanuganti is creating a platform based on AI, but one that is personal and controlled by you. This episode is supported by Terso. Terso is the open-source edge database from the creators of libSQL. Do you put your edge computing close to your users? You should put your data there too. Terso makes this easy utilizing the developer experience of SQLite. Access a free starter plan at terso.tech/codestory. Terso, welcome to the data edge. This episode is brought to you by our friends at MemberStack. MemberStack is the fastest way for you to launch a beautiful Webflow MVP with robust authentication and smooth payments integration. Join companies like Slack and American Airlines in serving millions of members every single day. Get started for free by visiting memberstack.com/codestory. Suman Kanuganti is married with a 5-year-old daughter, which he greatly enjoys. He loves robots as a robotics major, but describes himself as a human-oriented person, one who wants to elevate the experience of people. Outside of tech, he enjoys playing volleyball and is a foodie with his wife. They enjoy yellowtail sashimi and modern Mexican fusion, but at home, they enjoy remixing cuisines with different spices. In his previous company, Suman built solutions around augmenting the human experience for blind people. Moving forward, he wanted to expand this to allow people to use AI to create long-term memory, personally for you and for your loved ones. This is the creation story of Personal AI.
Personal AI, in short, is a AI version of an individual person. More importantly, that is grounded in them, in their facts, in their opinions, in their thoughts, in their voice. That actually belongs to them. They own it, not only the data, but also the model for everyday use, for everyday communications, and having it as an extension of you as much as having a second you of yourself to work in your favor. We started this company more than 3 years ago now. We've been building technology with this core premise or thesis of a AI version of an individual because I lost a mentor of mine who I learned a lot from. I wanted to have a intellectual conversation and emotional conversation to keep up with my learning curves, as well as just being able to have that kind of access on my day-to-day basis in my journey of building startups. So in my previous company, I built this company called AIRA, AIRA, which is more about technology augmenting the experiences for people who are blind and low vision. So this company started about how can you augment your own mind to the point where we can actually have conversations beyond the limitations of our own time, our own availability, our own kind of access to other people. At the core, our intention is to give a model for every person that they can scale themselves for their loved ones as well as for their colleagues, their communities, and you name it.
Let's dive into the MVP then. So tell me about that first version of the product you built. How long did it take to build, and what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
So we call the first version of the product Model 1. The technology behind the scenes is essentially what we refer to as a personal language model. When we started the company 3 years ago, the development of large language model was known. But my co-founder and CTO, Sharon Zhang, she told me that to truly achieve what you're trying to achieve, you cannot start with a large language model because fundamentally, we need to ground this data in small amounts of data, which belongs to an individual. So we actually start with something called a long-term memory of every person. And this memory is time-bound, like similar to how our lives are. As you go by your life, historically or continuously, we create this like memory unit, a unit of data that surrounds you, that understands in the context, has the relevant piece of information. And over a period of time, it builds, a stack. On top of this long-term memory, we build this personal language model. This language model, for people who are tech savvy and who is following the AI trends, does not actually depend on large language model. It's our own implementation of personal language model. And then comes, just generally this idea of like API around your model, right? Meaning you are your own IP address, you have your own IP address. So the first use case turns out to be, can I talk to Larry AI? Can I, what would Larry do in these particular situations? So it's useful today for communication purposes. You probably are receiving multiple different text messages from everyday people. You probably have many different means to be able to write on a day-to-day basis or reply to people. So you can use your own personal AI to be able to generate responses that is grounded within your own data, not the general data, within your own data that constructs meaningful responses to questions, to, brainstorming ideas, to, chatter that people would want to have. So it's technically having a conversation with you, but your AI self.
Let's stay on that MVP for a minute. With any MVP, you've got to make certain decisions and trade-offs around how you're going to approach it, how you're going to build it, how you're going to limit the way you start. So tell me about some of those you had to work through and how you coped with those decisions.
I think there are a lot of learning curves that happened over the past, 3 years of development, right? So because we think about, in contrast, LLMs has been in development for like 9 years. We started off this experience of, human communicating to the AI because, naturally that's the UX people expect. One of the challenging things was there was a cold start problem. Like, for example, Noah, like, I don't know you. Like, I don't know what I would talk with you. Like, there is no existing relationship for us to continue the conversation as much as like starting new. The experience that people were looking for was more of a augmented experience, not necessarily a replacement experience. We shifted our UX from a human to, simply just the human to AI experience to actually a human to human communication tool with like AIs in the loop. For example, when you send me a message, like almost like a text message, even in my text or even in like personal AI native application, my AI will draft a response for me and I will have an opportunity to review it and then send it. But I will have also an opportunity to kind of edit it. So I think the road to MVP, specifically around how this use case is constructed, how it could be useful for people in a way that is not like too burdensome. It's almost like integrated into our everyday life. So we wanted to make the training idea passive. And it took a while for us to figure that out. Like, how do you make the training process so easy, so passive that you're not actively thinking about, oh my God, now I have to train my data?
This episode is supported by Terso. Terso is the open source edge database from the creators of libSQL, the popular fork of SQLite. If you put your edge computing close to your users, like with Netlify or Vercel edge functions or Cloudflare workers, you should put your data there too, in order to maximize performance gains at the edge. Terso makes it easy. With a developer experience of SQLite in a distributed database, you can replicate much closer to your users than traditional database offerings in the cloud. Terso's lightweight, easy to use, and free to get started. The team at Terso is offering a generous starter plan specifically for Code Story listeners. Head over to terso.tech/codestory and get started today. That's turso.tech/codestory. Terso, welcome to the Data Edge. This episode was automatically optimized by Cast. If you run cloud-native software on AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure, you know how out of hand the bill can get. This uncertainty hurts your business, but you can solve it with Cast AI. Cast AI automates cloud cost, performance, and security management for hundreds of companies of all sizes. The platform's customers begin saving immediately and cut an average of over 60%. So before you go and sign a multi-year contract with a cloud provider or lay people off, check out what Cast AI can do for you. To get you saving even faster, Cast AI is offering a free cloud cost audit with a personal consultation. Visit cast.ai/codestory to get started. Then moving forward, you've got your first version of the product. How did you progress it and mature it from there? And I'm curious about how you go about building your roadmap. How do you go about deciding, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or to address with personal AI?
In my previous company, built that company with so integrated into the community itself, with blind people, right? With this company, the problem was a little bit different. In other words, we had this multitude of users that you can potentially go after with these models of individual. You can serve people with dementia, with early stage where they can remember everything and you can recall things when you're going about your daily utility. But that requires, a different form factor that has different set of challenges. Okay, then you can go after thought leaders who would want to almost scale themselves, because I myself lost a thought leader who I want to communicate. So there is a demand in there. But that requires a lot of work upfront to be able to create the AIs as well. The approach, at least few things that worked out for me was even year one, when we were trying to figure out the data structures, when we were trying to figure out R&D and technology, we started talking to people. And during that time, I used the technique called ethnographic studies, which is more open-ended, to kind of understand what is happening in people's life with a very vague imagination of what a potential product would look like and if it exists. So during that time, it was all over the place, right? Depending on if you're talking to a professional CEO or if you're talking to a small business person, if you're talking to a mom, right? There's all over the place. So I think we started very broad, doing multiple different ethnographic studies. And once we had that initial product, then we narrowed down to specific groups of people that would get the time to value much faster, right? Because obviously there is a little bit of training process involved, and eventually we want everybody to have their own personal AI, but got to start somewhere. So I think the second narrowing was more centered around how can we get these AIs useful to them where there is super high need, but at the same time to value is much faster. And then lately, over the past, I should say 3 to 4 months, is the biggest unlock in terms of market forming. And I'm glad that it kind of goes to the original thesis of, scaling people, which is this personal brands. Personal brands are people who has specific personal data and they have a moat. They probably are solopreneurs. They could be running small businesses. They could be thought leaders, coaches and leaders, and maybe sometimes motivational speakers as well. But these are small group of communities. They may serve just 100 or 1,000, at the most 10,000. They're not celebrities, right? They're not this huge influencers out there you will see with millions of followers, but they have their moat, and their moat is their personal data. Ultimately, that's where we belong, and that's our first market to go after.
Tell me about team. Let's switch over there and tell me about how you built your team and what you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you.
I started this journey in September of 2019, right? This was even pre-COVID. I was still exiting out of my previous company. So I spent at least 2 or 3 months to even get my own heads wrapped around what am I going to do with this concept. So after reading multiple different research and papers, digging into memory, how human memory functions, how the models functions, I knew one thing, which was AI. I'm a technologist myself. I'm an engineer. I have a robotics major. I'm a developer. I'm also did systems. And one of the reasons why I came building startups is I almost was confident that I know a lot of technology, so I want to build experiences. I never had a hands-on experience with the AI myself. I did the previous company, but the ML engineers, kind of did it for me because I was running the product and company and business. So I went after looking for my CTO, who is super expert in AI, and that's Sharon Zhang. True story, I had 120 people that I spoke to. So I took my time to put the team together. And then I also brought in my, previous designer, UX focused, given the nature of personal AI and how the UX needs to be built. So we three together came in Feb of 2020 to create the company, and March COVID happened. So we had to shift strategies and we are going to build the company. So it's turned out to be a little bit more hybrid. And over a period of time, I will tell you, I think as the company evolved in terms of shaping up how the model is, how the use case is, how the UX is, the talent kind of shifted as well. We always got the talent, and there are people who stayed along through the journey, and sometimes we had to be honest and be transparent about ourselves, when it is not a fit because the company is headed in a different direction. Then we had to make choices, but at the end of the day, we are all together working in this full mission of personal AI. One of the things I do with team is you always need to be open-minded. Who is the next right target for the potential company. I always favor people who has the vision of where this company can head to, and work hard to make it happen. So right talent, right time, right mindset, with this core idea of respect to the human beings is fundamentally important for our team, and that's what we are. It's a very diverse team as well.
This episode is supported by Treble. This day and age, APIs are a fact of life. And as such, product and engineering teams need tooling that is lightweight, real-time, and data-rich to help them ship and maintain APIs faster. That's where Treble comes in. Treble is an all-in-one platform for the entire API lifecycle. The product offers world-class monitoring and observability, providing more than 40 data points for each request, enabling you to understand everything from performance to user behavior. Dashboards help connecting your entire team for lifecycle collaboration. Documentation is automatically generated, saving massive amounts of time for your development team with every new release. And setting up Treble? Super easy and fast. In 3 simple steps, you can be up and running with their platform. Their pricing is designed to support API teams of all sizes. So get started with Treble today and automate your API ops. Did I mention they have a free forever plan? Find out more by visiting treble.com/codestory. That's TRBLLE.com/codestory. This episode is encrypted by CipherStash. Data breaches are becoming a fact of life. Know why? One of the reasons is because developers lack the right tooling to get the job done, i.e. encryption at rest tools are complex and inadequate. The solution? Encryption in use with CipherStash. CipherStash uses searchable encryption in use technology, providing continuous and universal protection for sensitive data. With CipherStash, you can turn your existing database into a vault, utilizing zero-trust key management, SQL native, and with no code. Though encryption is complicated, CipherStash is easy to use. The tool fully supports SQL via a drop-in driver replacement, supporting the query types you know and love today. And did we mention it's fast? For queries over 100 million records, you can expect additional overhead of less than 1 millisecond. It's a no-brainer. Get started by reviewing their docs or downloading sample projects in Rails or Node plus Sequelize today. Visit cypherstash.com/codestory and get started protecting your data. Let's switch to scalability then. So, did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or with scale in mind, or is this something you're fighting as you grow and gain traction?
I think scaling is probably different at different times of the company. So far, we've been very much focused on scaling efficiently. In other words, built a company before, which was Ira. So it's definitely a capital efficient company. I always tell people, hey, with $8 million that we raised, we actually built something fundamentally different set of models, which is personal language models, in contrast to huge raises that normally happens in the industry. So we are very much like a company with a ground up approach, with the problem and the technology and the models with the right people. Not necessarily the top down thing that is happening within the AI space right now, with a lot of deep pockets, putting in money into buying the markets. I think where we are right now is a spot where the market needs are there. People care about privacy, people care about personal data, people care about ownership, but more importantly, the ultra personalization of what we are able to offer to the market is yet to be seen. We are just getting out from our heads down mode of building and talking to few niche groups of people and customers to now actually putting personal AI out there for anybody to start building their own model and use it in their daily basis. And I think, of course, that scale requires a little bit of different thinking, a business mindset, a operational driven focus. It likely move from technology operations to more business operations, and the talent need will change and the capital needs will change. And those are all, of course, the things that we will have to build as a business, I guess.
So as you step out on the balcony and look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of sticking to the principles that we are as a company. Because I'll tell you, even 1 to 2 years ago, or even 18 months ago, the intention of creating an AI version of you was whoa, let's pause there for a second, right? Just people getting their heads wrapped around was difficult. So I'm actually happy with all the AI trends that are happening right now, because there is generally awareness, generally openness and willingness to kind of think through beyond what we are used to in our normal ways of doing things. And that happens every 20 or 30 years, and we have all seen that. Now there is enough digital footprint to kind of look at the historical trends to kind of anticipate what's going to happen next. So what I'm more proud of is sticking to personal models, sticking to the scalability and efficiency of these models, sticking to the principles of you own the data, you control the data, you own the model, because attribution is still a big problem with the large language model. Ownership is a big problem with the large language model. What happens to the transparency, safety, ethics? Those are all the attributes that we have thought through. And, the reason we exist is the reason why, the macro AI issues are now getting to surface. So in a way, I cannot wait to be out there and say we are the solution, or one of the solutions for the issues that people are thinking and talking within the AI space, which I think is really important. And the reasons we have that is probably because we started off with focusing on the problem and the human and build the technology around it, not necessarily the other way around.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
There were some early signals on what kind of experience that people were looking for, specifically around interactions in the conversations. I think there were some other forces that were acting on us, because we also need to kind of raise the capital to be able to finish development of the models that we were building and realize the true potential and vision of what we were aiming after, which we are at a place right now. But then there is this constant stress and pressure of showing the traction as well, even early days, for a tech company. But we are more of a, model development company early on, because there is tons to develop before we are even in a position to experiment. So I think we could have probably taken a different approach rather than kind of going to the market and putting something out there for people to hop on while building the development. Because guess what? I think as a company with a limited amount of capital, you can only do one thing really good. While trying to serve the customers who are coming in, and while trying to build once you have the engine, you still have to build the body, right? Doing simultaneously while riding the car is extremely difficult. So I think we could have done maybe different alternate approaches. Maybe we could have altered our course of action in terms of how many customers that we would want to speak to. Eventually, we made explicit choices on closing the doors for specific use cases and opening the doors for specific use cases, and narrowing in onto what kinds of personal data formats that we will support, what kind of personal outputs in terms of AI that we will support. And that required a little bit of hard decisions, and we had to communicate to our customers hey, sorry, we will not be able to support speech because we are not necessarily focusing on meeting transcriptions, right? But there are people who are using those functionalities for those use cases, but we cannot fulfill those promises. So I think just again going back to the transparency and being honest and being brutal and truthful to yourself, there were some mistakes and some corrections.
Okay, this will be fun, especially given, everything in the industry and all the hype right now. What does the future look like for personal AI, the product, and for your team?
One of the core alterations to how we would communicate with the services, I believe, will change with personal AI. What do I mean by that? What we are doing is we are building a long-term memory for every person. We are building a model for every person. There is an IP address for every model to interact with you. Right? So every piece of data, every communication that you're doing on the internet, it has to leave through your personal AI and it has to come to your personal AI. So rather than opening an app and sending your data to a service provider, imagine opening an app and the service provider makes an API call to you that not only provides or protects the privacy of the data transfer that is happening, but also gives you this ultra rich personal experience, because every service that exists out there, Uber or Airbnb or DoorDash, any messaging experience that you are having with other person is very limited. Everybody compartmentalizes our life into their platforms and then tries to fit in and then shares the data across many different platforms, they're not working in the favor of the consumers and not to the ultra personal experience that we are hopefully looking for as individual human beings. So flip that narrative, let the services provide that super ultra personal experiences, give that control to the user. Users will give the data, but give the control to them. And so I think in the future, there will be more personalization, but that requires this fundamental change of giving that control and letting services make an API call to the people, for them to make more money, but at the same time, protect this privacy and respect individual person rather than just like aggregating the data left and right everywhere.
Let's switch to you. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why. I know you mentioned a mentor earlier, and I'm curious if you'll mention that person again. But tell me who influences you.
I mean, Larry Bork is definitely one of my go-to people in terms of like who I aspire to be. I think I picked up a lot of his characteristics. Yes, I mean, I'm a technologist and I have my own brand, but I think I picked up like how to approach issues or techniques of people or even negotiation. I think I definitely look up to him. In my personal life, of course, like, my parents, but I think if I had to push through in the professional life, I do like following Ben Thompson. He's an analyst. The reason I like him is his thought process on how he approaches like different macro situations that are happening around the space. Yeah, sure, he focuses on the technology, which is I am in, but the synthesis and the analysis and the conclusions that he drives gives me a different form of thinking, a different form of like applying some of those thoughts into my own work life. So I think, he's one other person that I can probably say publicly. He's a public figure that I would idealize. Yeah.
We talked about, some mistakes earlier, but this is a little different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do different? Or where would you consider taking a different approach? It doesn't have to be something that, went wrong. Could have worked, but maybe tweak it a little bit.
I would be launching personal AI in November of 2022, right? So technically, we just put our like beta product out there in April. Before that, it was mostly like experimentation and beta. So if I were to do different, I would like probably alter the sequence of events that happen. But I would also remiss if I don't say that if we haven't experimented early on, we probably wouldn't be landing at the same place where we are today. If I would know in the future, I would probably have like better answers. But I think the only thing I would say is I would probably have made better choices in regards to the strategy on when to do, what to do, and what kinds of investments need to be made for, cultivating the relationships with the people who were interested in building their personal AI. So I think we probably did too much experimentation early on. I would probably alter the course of experimentation a bit different.
Okay, Suman, last question. So you're getting on a plane. You're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit, several times?
My advice would be just to stay grounded, right? I mean, I think the entrepreneurial journey, I think we all see what is in the media, right? But on the other side, I think the reality is you have to embrace and accept the good, the ugly, the bad, and the ups and downs. So one thing that I tell people, in terms of advice would be just stay grounded, because you will have some good times and you will have some bad times. But either way, you got to remain within your own control and ground yourself into the truth and then take what is your next step. Don't get carried away either way too much.
That's fantastic advice. Well, Suman, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of personal AI.
Thank you, Noah. It was fun. It's definitely an interesting set of take on the podcast for sure.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed Sponsored Jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ12 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.